Guys, welcome back. This is instructor Phil Demetriadis, and let's talk about going to like part two here. I sort of jumped forward and I did a part three already, and I decided that it might be a little bit more complex for some of my beginners, so I decided to go back and I'm going to do a part two here first for you. So one of the things I wanted to mention, just to do a quick review, right? We had center line of an object. We talked about this right here, which was drawing from the ground up. And there's certain times when we do these different things. I tend to, when you get a little bit more advanced, you'll do all three at the same time. But the one thing I wanted to mention was down here on drawing with cross sections. Drawing with cross sections, part of that came to me from working with Maya, because in Maya I could lay down a curve, and it was called an EP curve. And then what we could do is we could put a round shape like this, and we could actually tell Maya to basically loft or extrude along that pathway curve. And what would happen is we would get this sort of round shape. It would look like a hose that would be coming through like so, okay? So you'd get this hose shape that'd be coming through part of your sketch, okay? And I'm just throwing it down here really quick. So I wanted to mention that. So when I'm drawing with cross sections, a lot of times you'll see me do something like this, where I'll throw a line out, and then you'll see me sort of do this real quick, and then I come back and wrap a line over it because I already had that baseline down on the ground, okay? All right, so for the demo, what I wanted to do first is I realized last time that I jump into a little bit more of an advanced section. So what I want you to do now with your organic shapes is I want you to take a couple minutes to think about how these shapes are interacting inside a world of perspective. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here. I'm going to draw a quick one-point perspective grid. So I'm not using a ruler on this. I'm just going to freehand it, okay? And give me a second here. Yeah, I got to stand up off this antique, so it's a little bit easier to see. Okay, and let me go the other direction here. So a huge benefit in drawing is being able to put down a grid and think about part of the ground plane that you have, right? Those of you that have had me as an instructor before, we talk extensively about that because it allows us to get a real good determination on the spatial depth that's happening, okay? So as I have this now I'm going to come over and I'm going to just start drawing some basic shapes. So before, you guys were just drawing shapes out of your head, which is totally fine. One of the problems that happens with that is people tend to draw shapes all over the place at multiple angles, and sometimes they forget two important things. Number one, they're not thinking about the angle at which they're drawing the shape, and number two, they're forgetting about drawing through the shape and drawing the cross sections that help give the form. So here, what I can do, I'm going to start with a couple really basic shapes here. I'm going to come over here, and I'm just going to put like a round sort of blobby shape right there on the ground plane. Okay, so this is me doing part number two, where I'm starting from the bottom, and then I'm going to sort of sketch up here. Now there's a couple approaches. I could come up here, and I could sketch on a top contour line like that, and then I could come back on top of my contour line, and then I could wrap basically rubber bands or pretend I'm dropping that piece of yarn on top of my drawing, right? When I do this, okay, that grid under there helps me to see if I start here, and if I start to go upward with this, and then I come to the other side and I'm drawing through the shape, I know, you see this line, let me draw it right here, see that line right there? That line is what is on the other side of that shape. So that's really important to me, because if I come down and connect that line to there, my perspective's a little bit off, right? So that's an important thing for me to think about. So by having that grid there and that straight line, I realize if my line goes up, the other side, I'm going to have to be doing something like this, coming down and connecting to about there. Okay, that'll give me a more accurate cross-section of part of my drawing. So the same thing here. If I come over here, let me go back down. Luckily, I have my grid on another layer here, right? So let me throw another line in right here, put another line in right there, okay? So now if I come down and I throw another cross-section in, I realize if I start here, I know the finish back here is going to be about there. Okay, why? Because in perspective, we have this thing called transferring scale. Transferring scale means that if I have something that's this tall right here, what I have to do is if I draw a line from the top and the bottom of this, recede it back to the vanishing point, that scale of that object is right there. And that's the same principle if I flip it vertically. vertically, if I say somebody is this tall here, and I decide to take their height and transfer that into part of a location, all I have to do is then draw a line from here back to the vanishing point, draw it on the base, and then where that line intersects right there, that's the height of my person there. So what does that mean? Well, as I'm drawing, and then once I get into the world of perspective, it means that my organic shapes are going to be subject to a transfer in scale, and I need to think about that a little bit in the back of my mind. So if I come over here and I wrap this, I can see where this line goes from here, and I can see it's intersecting. Actually, I drew this line off a little bit. That was my bad. Let me erase it. That line from there, actually I made two mistakes there because I'm not paying attention. That's what happens when I talk sometimes. This line should have landed here. I was just a teeny bit over. That line would have landed about there, and then this line would have landed about here. So this is just a great little practice for you to get your cross sections to be 100%. Okay, now I'm not telling you that you have to do this all the time. You don't. You can just get in there and draw it manually from your brain. So cross sections can change, but this is just a way to guide you through. So if I come over here, I'm just going to draw one sort of out of my head. I don't know what the back surface of this object is doing. It might be going a little bit straight. It might be curved. Here it bows out a little bit. So as I draw this, I might wrap down. It hits about there. And so basically, I'm just getting in the habit of coming in and drawing these little cross sections on an object. By doing that now, okay, what I'm going to do really quick is let me go down and lower the opacity of my grid so my object is a little bit more predominant there. So there I have one base object, okay? Now let's go do something a little bit more. Let's start with something that's a little bit rounder. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to draw a basic sphere, okay? I'm going to use some modeling terms here where I'm going to grab part of this surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap a line around this like we did before in this class. We did this in weeks, in the beginning weeks, right, with our core primitives, and I'm going to wrap another line around this right here. So I get a feel for the perspective of that sphere. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this surface right in here, and I'm going to pull that surface out. So one way I can pull that out is just by coming in here, and this is what I was doing before with drawing that little EP curve tool along a path line here, right? So I'm going to come from here, I'm going to start to draw this out, but then I'm going to start to draw a couple of the cross sections that are in here. Now, you can see what happens is as I grab that and pull that organic shape out, and I start to turn, I'm going to have a part here that curves. So what I'm going to do to make my life easy real quick is I'm going to continue the top of that curve, and I'm going to taper off my shape here like so. So here it's going to end. I'm going to taper this. Here I'm going to say it's about this big. So I'm going to wrap this up to about here, and then this is going to round here, and then this is going to come back here and round. It's going to connect to there. Do you see that? So then it's just an issue of connecting these little lines together because I pulled that shape out. Now, if you get confused on how to do that, how to get that organic rhythm inside there, all you have to do is go back and think about a ribbon. So I mentioned the ribbon before. The ribbon is basically this. If I come in here and draw a line that goes across, I draw straight lines down, okay? And I come back in here, and then I wrap. I'm basically copying the same line that I had above. That's my ribbon. Now, where ribbons get a little bit more complex is when the ribbon overlaps itself, okay? So here, imagine if this ribbon then came here and curved and goes back this way. Okay, students get, oh my God, it's crossing itself. What do I do? Don't cross the beams, right? Well, all I have to do is basically take the same measurement in here. See, it starts to come this way, starts to curve over, and then that's going to overlap like this. Okay, that's a huge point of basic drawing that's really important because now I could come in with my eraser and I could come back in here and I could erase this part right here. Because you see that? I'm not going to see part of that part. Now, I don't always erase it. What I prefer to do is draw a dotted line in here because I want students to understand that that shape is overlapping itself in there, okay? And that's something that a lot of students don't understand. This is called drawing through the shape that we have to learn how to master and how to bring together. So here, if I can do a ribbon, which I'd say everybody in this class can do, then it's just me going back and adding a a circle element in there. Now, when I say a circle element, a circular element, I could have something that's distorted like that, okay? And then that could look, like it's squashed a little bit. I can try to get a more perfect ellipse in there. It's completely up to me. So by doing that, I realize that if I were to draw that ellipse here and here, that the end of it's going to be going like this as it's turning. It's going to be foreshortened to myself, right? So I can come in here. I can draw that ellipse, okay? And now as that ellipse goes back this way, I could come back in here and sketch that ellipse. So this is just a nice little example of what we can do when we take a ribbon and then we start to round it. Now, after I draw that ellipse in here, I realize that now I have a line that's going to wrap around this way, and it's going to wrap around part of that elliptical shape. See that? And this is going to round here, and part of this is going to round there as well. So once I get that round parts in there, it starts to feel more like a hose now in perspective. Same thing here. As this wraps around here, that line's going to wrap around as this elliptical shape is wrapping around that object as it turns. Does that make sense? I'm basically turning it into a hose, okay? So back up here, let me just finish that. Let me come over here, let's draw through the shape. There it is. I'm going to put that round element there, and then as it wraps through here. Now let's say for some reason this tapers off, and it's going to go into a large taper. So if I taper it upward like this, with my organic shape, and I'm going to bring this line to about here. So now, if you take a look at what's happening, I start to draw through. Now, don't do this. This is what a lot of students do. They come in here and they go, and that's not right. You're drawing like half of a football. You can't do that. In order to draw ellipse correctly, you have to go through and feel the ellipse come through the whole entire shape. So now as I start to draw that ellipse, I can now sense and feel that it's tapering up. That ellipse is going to start to get larger until I get to the very end. Draw through your ellipses. I know it takes some practice, but do you see there's more? And let's say I taper this end off down to this big. And then it comes back down here. Okay? So this is still an organic shape that you can draw. Okay? Now, I have the side, I have the bottom there. There, you see that? I'm drawing through, getting these shapes in there, right? So there I have what that could look like. I mean, that could be a fire hose. It could look like toothpaste that's been squirted on the ground. It's just a basic shape, okay? Now I'm going to come back in here, sort of do that same thing. Let me just grab a surface of this and pull it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this circular shape here, and I'm just going to pull it out and pull it out to about here. Now, I'm looking underneath it so I can see the axis line go like this and go like that right there. See that? I'm just basically pulling out a simple cylinder shape. But as I pull that out, I can squash and stretch it and round it a little bit. So let's say I don't want it to look like a cylinder. I want it to look a little bit more organic. I could round this shape like this, put a line going here on the side, and I could have this thing taper down to about there. So I can wrap a line around it. I have a line that comes up here, and then I have a little bit of the top there. Oops, sorry, a little bit of slip on the Cintiq. There, and then I get that sort of round element that comes out of there, okay? All right, now let's pull another piece out here and let's flop it over itself. So here, I have that sphere, right? I'm gonna come over here, I'm gonna take another rounded edge, and I'm just gonna pull this out like this, and then I'm gonna flop it over like that, okay? So I'm gonna take this shape, I start to pull this shape all the way out. As it flops, there's going to be a little bit of a bend, and I can measure. I have that line on the side there, so I know part of this line as it flops over. Then I'm going to come down. I'm going to taper it off a little bit like that. Might have a little bit of a curve in there. And then I can wrap this out. I can give it some thickness. Okay, and then I could come back here. And here, this isn't key. If I draw through the shape, I have to figure out where that line came through and how it connected back down to there. Because you can see part of my first approach was a little bit off there. So as I come in here and give this some thickness and bring this line in, I realize the curve should actually be over a little bit more, and I'm a little bit off. So the curve should come up to about there. And again, that's the importance of drawing through part of your shapes, okay? Now, I know this is a real goofy shape. I can see underneath it. I'm going to wrap it with a couple of rubber bands. This has a center line that goes on the top, okay? So this is what I want you guys to do with, part of that part 2 is just getting in there and just having fun with it, Remember before I was talking about, I mentioned before in the part 3 lecture, which I'll show after this, right? The drawing with Mr. Graber, and he used to have us do melted pancakes, right? When I was in 7th grade. So a melted pancake, we had a basic something like that, oops, I was supposed to connect right there. And then we have that melted pancake, right? And then there were 2 ways. We could round the top of it, or we could go vertical. Another option that we had was slanting the sides. So if I go like this and I slant the side to there, and I slant the side to there, right? As long as I have another shape on top that matches part of this shape here, so I'm going to draw that. I had a shape that went wide, and then it went in and had a little curve, and then it went like this, okay? Now, what gets complicated is now I'm overlapping part of another drawing, okay? So you guys will have to erase in Sketchbook Pro here. I could come in like this really quick, and I could draw it. Okay, do you see that? I have it in there. Now I connect the lines from here to here. Okay, I have another organic shape, but to see it a little bit easier, I could come down here now, and I can erase the lines that are in the back here. Okay, so that shape pops out a little bit more. And by doing that, I get something really wonderful that starts to happen. I am getting overlap of shape. When I get overlap of shape, this is how we start to learn how to create depth inside a frame, which is a 3D illusion, okay? But I'm not done yet, right? This is a basic drawing class. I want to make sure I'm able to come in here and I'm able to divide up my shape. Now, hold on a minute. Let me grab my ruler so I don't have to get up and move over the Cintiq all the time. If I draw a line up here matching sort of this line, I'm just going to receive this back here to the vanishing point, and then I'm going to bring that line back down about there, and watch. When I draw a line from here that's dotted, okay, I could get that to connect. Now I thought the angle might be here, but the angle is being a little foreshortened, so the angle ends up looking about like right there on the back side, okay? But hold on, I'm not going to draw that as a straight line. I thought the line would go there, but I'm going to match this line, the bottom line, back to the vanishing point. Because of that, I realize it's being foreshortened a little bit, and at that angle, I'm going to have a dotted line about there. So that's where you could use your ruler to spice up your shapes. Let's say I wanted to cut that organic shape in half right now. I could come back here, I can take my ruler, okay, and I'm going to come in here, I'm going to draw a line from there to there, and I draw a line from here to here, okay, and I'm just going to place it at some angle. I'm going to draw down from there to here, okay. Actually, let me move the VP over just a teeny bit more here. I'm going to draw a line into here. I'm going to connect that line back up to about there. We see just a little bit of that side. Now I'm going to erase these interior lines that I have. Uh-oh, got to find the right layer. There it is. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to erase a little bit. Hold on, let me merge this down below with the other drawing. There we go. I'm going to erase a little bit of those lines. Now I have to do this side, right? I'm going to drop that side down into about there. I go back to the vanishing point. See, I have a line that goes into there. Where that line hits about right there, I'm then going to connect that back together. There. And I put a cut section into that piece. Okay? So I can keep drawing my organics. I mean, you just name it. I like to think of things. Here, I'm going to put a rock on this hanging over. So I'm going to come up here. I know that there's a center point to that. And so I'm going to come in here and just sketch what might look like some type of a round organic rock shape, okay? And then what do I have right there? I have part of the base line that rock exists in, right? So now we talked about this a little bit ago. I want to add the top to that rock. There's a couple ways I could do that. I could draw this shape up here smaller and connect the lines. Let's do that real quick. Let's do the couple different ways that I could do it. Number one is if I take this shape and I redraw it again, a little bit smaller, like so, and then I connect lines from the corners, and then from the corners, and from here to there. That's one option I could do. And remember, it's matching my horizon line now. I can look underneath it, and I can see underneath that shape, right? Okay, that's one option that I could do is that. What's another option that I could do? If I wanted to, remember I showed you where Mr. Graber, we drew the little pancakes. I could go vertical on my pancakes, like this. And I could just draw lines, and then I can match the bottom curve, like so, and like so. Now I have another shape in there, but here I haven't drawn through the shape. That's not a bad idea for me to consider, because I know I'm going to have a line that comes back this way, okay? And it's going to do the same thing. That's basically this line's going to curve back into here, and part of that's going to come back over, and it's going to wrap like that, okay? And that would be me drawing through part of that shape, which is extremely important, okay? All right, now, let's say I don't want to do that. I don't know how many undos I have. Let's see, I had 40 in here. Let's see if I can get it. Oh, it died. Okay, so now, what's another option? Let me erase it real quick. Another option that I have for drawing my shape, right, is just to round the top of it. I just come in here and do this. Put an organic curve on the top. But I need to wrap it with some lines, some rubber bands, right? So watch. I'm going to take my ruler, go to my vanishing point. I'm going to draw a line. Oops. Slippage. I have this word I created called grippage. It's the act of gripping. My wife tells me it's not a word, and I argue with her about it. Because in my professional opinion, the act of doing something, right? So slippage is the act of it slipping, not it slipping itself. Anyway, that's a whole debate. But now I'm going to come up here, draw a couple dotted lines. I'm going to draw through that shape. You see how I did it? So I'm going to come back here with my ruler again, and I'm going to come back here and draw another line that goes from here, and I'm going to draw a dotted line that comes over. And now I know where that line is going to end, because I can draw through my rock and I can see it. It's going to end right here. So if I draw a dotted line up, there. Now it's up on the other side. Okay? And I could do the same thing again back here as well. So all I'm doing in this step is just doing a series of organic shapes. Okay? It's going to end right about, let me get that line. It was too faint. I couldn't see it. Actually, I think I curved it like that. So that one would have ended a little bit more, which would have changed part of that curve. Actually, hold on a second. I'm going to just fix it so I don't have to change that real quick. I wasn't drawing dark enough and I couldn't see. Let's say that that's the line back there, right? So now that I know that line, I can see exactly where this ends, and then I could come up and I can get that other interior curve right there, okay? So that's the importance of us really drawing through the shape and understanding. As you can see, all of my objects feel tangible, okay? They feel realistic. They feel like they're in, you know, they could fall down, you could reach out and touch them. That's the whole goal that we're doing. So back to the funky organics, you know, if you end up, since I'm above my horizon line now, I can tell myself, okay, I can start with an ellipse. And I could say I'm going to put a funky curve on this. And I'm going to just say I do a weird cloud shape. Here, so I'm going to pull this out, okay? And I'm going to sort of wrap a line that comes over here. And I'm going to come over here and draw another circle, and I'm going to pull something out of there, like that. And then I'm going to come back here, pull out another line coming out the backside here, okay? So I just sketched in a real rough shape. Now it's going to be my responsibility. Hold on. That's overlapping in that worst part. It's a little bit of a tangency. So I'm going to pull that shape out a little bit more and then round it here and do this instead. So it's a little bit easier to be seen, right? So now I have to understand when I place my contour lines on there, I have to get my contour lines to match to the perspective, right? So I know what? I know that my horizon line is down here, so I'm looking up at that. So as I come back up here and draw on top of this, so I'm going to start right here and just throw a line wrapping around that body. But what happens when I get down to right here? I'm going to go ahead and receive that line back to my vanishing point. So I'm going to come in here and start to bring this back to my VP, and it's going to hit right there. Okay? I can't see through the other side, so I'm going to draw and imagine that on the other side it's doing this. It's wrapping around. Okay? All right? I'm going to come in here and throw a center line going across my object. I'm going to have it round up here and have that center line come up and round right up on the top of this object. I'm going to draw through part of that. Okay, I'm going to draw through part of this. And I'm going to come in here and do the same thing that I'm drawing in there, right? Now I have this other end that's receding away from me, right? So look, I'm going to draw another center line that comes down to here. I'm going to come from that center line. I'm going to recede that back down here to the vanishing point. When it gets down to about right there, it's going to curve back, right? and it curves back. Okay, I know where the start of that line is. It's going to go like this. It's going to come down. It's going to round. It's going to come, and it's going to curve about there because I can see where the top of that shape is. Does that make sense? So I'm just drawing through all my shapes here. Let's come over here. I know my vanishing point is right here, so anything to the left side I'm going to be able to see that view from as an ellipse. Anything to the right side I'm going to be able to see that view. If my ellipse is right in front of me, it's going to be flat, right? Okay, since we know that, when I get over here and I start to draw this shape, there. So I'm going to get that organic element there. Okay? And I'm just going to keep drawing these. Okay. So now I'm just sort of doing the cross section in there and getting that in there to make it feel like it's actually looks like it's some kind of weird seal in the sky, right? With the legs out and the head going forward, right? Okay, but it doesn't matter. It's just a shape, overlap of shapes, right? And every time you're drawing, so what's the key thing here? I'm going to go over, I'm going to wrap up this lecture right now for you. One of the key things that I was doing in this, which we're going to do a little bit later when we get to the mannequin. That's how you understand the human form, right? Remember we talked about X and Y axes? This is really important for understanding how organics work, okay? Is that when I came in here, I'm going to draw it in red, I have a dedicated line that's coming in here. It's wrapping over part of that shape, right? Here, if you look, oops, sorry, slipped a little bit there. I have part of that axis line here, and it comes up under that shape, and it comes up and it wraps sort of around the top. And now if I had to draw it on the back side, it's going to go this way. Okay, it's going to cross here. It's going to come up a little bit, and then I won't see it. It'll be up on the top part there. Okay, this actually would probably, let me back up there for a minute. This would round off a little bit more, where once I got to about here, it would round up there a little bit. So, you know, part of this is us correcting ourselves as we go, and then that line would come up there like so. Okay, so that's, talked about X and Y axes, right? Now let me switch to green. So green, here's my other line that's crossing there. See that inside there? That's huge. Those lines, those cross-section lines are drawing through the shape and getting me to understand how my object feels three-dimensional. Okay, so if I come back here, let's go to red. I come back down here. I already had a line that was right here. I had a line that was receding in. Okay, actually, my bad. I meant to draw that in green. Okay, I'm going to draw that in green as it recedes in this way. Okay, I had a line that went down here, a line that went through there, and it came through there, and that makes my shape feel realistic. Now, if I draw my line going this way, I'm just going to place a horizontal line, or any line in that matter. I'm just going to come across here, right? Now watch. I have a space there. So if I dip this down, and I come here, and I bring my dotted line downward, and I hit this spot here, I go across to here, then I'm going to bring that line upward to there. You see that? And then now it's going to go along the side of the object, basically to there, okay? And then it's going to dip down back to the ground plane where it hits. I didn't mean to draw that little end there, like that. So now that dotted line, if I follow that dotted line through my shape, it goes to here, and then I can connect these lines pretty much together, and that's how I'm drawing through my shape right there, okay? So think about the X and those Y lines interacting with each other. Okay, that's everything that I've drawn on this page right now is just a series of shapes. Now, to do something a little bit more complicated, do what I'm doing right here. Do the overlap. Okay, once you get that overlap in there and you start putting objects in front of other objects, you start to create more spatial relationships. So go back in, have fun, but just throw a horizon line in there to be conscientious of what's happening to your shapes, right? Some of you have never ever had to do this. Some of you have never even had anyone talk about a horizon line and how the shapes are interacting in that world. But this is the world that we live in. It's the world that we see, and it's the world that we walk through and interact with, and most importantly, it's the world you end up drawing on your paper. Okay? All right? Cool. All right, let me stop the recorder. Thanks, guys, and I'll have part 3 up very soon as well.